Sean Combs' lawyers are doubling down and asking the court to stop potential witnesses and accusers from publicly commenting on the rapper's criminal case. We're going to break down their latest letter to the judge and what this all means. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The battle between the government and Sean Combs' lawyers continue, and we aren't even close to a trial yet. You know, the trial where prosecutors will try to prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Combs committed racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution, more specifically, that he directed, coordinated, and participated in illegal, coerced sex sessions known as freak-offs that involve male sex workers, sometimes narcotics. But this current battle, what we're talking about right now, is centered around the ongoing issue of a gag order. And I will tell you, it is fascinating. It is fascinating. Now, if you've been following us here on Sidebar, you may recall that Sean Combs' lawyers, they have been petitioning the court to stop information from being discussed in the public about this case. And that has taken multiple forms. First, Combs' defense team accused the government of improperly releasing information and commenting about the case. You might recall that they accused the government of leaking the 2016 video of Combs purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura, his ex-girlfriend, in a hotel hallway. But they also said that the government, specifically Department of Homeland Security agents, they were improperly speaking to the media as well. And you might recall that Combs' lawyers, they presented a proposed draft gag order. Prosecutors objected. They said these accusations are not true. They proposed their own order in response. Judge Arun Subramanian, who's the judge currently overseeing this trial, he issued an order last month saying, quote, "The court has considered the parties' proposed orders and declines to adopt either side's proposal in full. Instead, the court finds that an order underscoring the parties' existing responsibilities is appropriate. With this order in hand, both sides can make sure that anyone involved with this case or the related investigation understands what they are not permitted to disclose. The point of this order is to ensure that nothing happens from now on that would interfere with a fair trial." The court is in receipt of defendant's October 25, 2024 letter concerning a news article with remarks attributed to a federal law enforcement source claiming to be involved in the government's investigation. Those remarks, if made by an agent involved in the investigation or prosecution of this case, are plainly improper. This order requires the government to notify the agencies involved in this case or the related investigation of their obligations. And Judge Subramanian's order directed the prosecutors, their staff, law enforcement officials who are working with prosecutors, and the defense, by the way, they're not off the hook too, this applies to the defense too, to follow the rules and not disclose grand jury materials or other non-public information. And that makes sense, right? Because Sean Combs, like every other criminal defendant, is entitled to a fair trial. And that makes sense, right? Because every defendant is entitled to a fair trial. And I'll tell you what, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But putting this issue to the side of what prosecutors or government agents may or may not be saying to the media and the public, put that to the side. There was still another ongoing issue. You see, Combs' lawyers have been trying to stop potential witnesses and their lawyers from making out-of-court statements. And this includes statements from those who have been filing sexual assault lawsuits against Combs, these accusers, and their lawyers too. And remember, Combs is facing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit accusing him of rape, sexual assault, sex trafficking, sexual exploitation. There are even claims from those who say they were minors, like 10 and 13 years old, when Combs sexually assaulted them. Now, as we're sorting through these legal filings, which I will say, whichever side you're on in the Combs case, both the prosecution and the defense, they're making some strong, solid legal arguments. And I got to tell you, I think that emphasizes how important it is to have a good lawyer on your side, right? Especially if you get injured. That's so important. That's why I want to call out our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. This is a firm with a dedicated team of over 1,000 attorneys, specialists, investigators, paralegals. There's no upfront fee. The whole process can be done straight from your smartphone. It is so simple. Oh, and also Morgan & Morgan has an incredible track record, like recent verdicts of $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, $6.8 million in New York. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. So the question becomes, can these people be silenced? Can they be gagged in any way because it may have a detrimental effect on Sean Combs' rights in his criminal case? It's an interesting legal question. Now, prosecutors, they objected to this. They objected to what they said was a victim gag order. And one of the things prosecutors had argued was, look, what is Combs asking for? He's either asking for just a wide, sweeping blanket order that would apply indiscriminately to just any person with claims against Combs and their lawyers, or he's asking for a more limited order that would force prosecutors to identify who its witnesses are months before trial. And the prosecutors say that is not right. Combs doesn't have a right to know who these witnesses are just yet. That could jeopardize their case. Wow. That brings me now to this latest letter from Combs' attorneys to Judge Subramanian. And what they say is, in this letter, yeah, I know we haven't responded to the government's arguments yet, but we got an immediate problem that we need to address. Quote, we write on behalf of our client, Mr. Sean Combs, regarding the deluge of improper pretrial publicity that is undermining Mr. Combs' right to a fair trial and the integrity of the grand jury proceedings. As the court is aware, Mr. Combs filed a motion to restrict extrajudicial statements by potential witnesses and their counsel, which the government has opposed. Mr. Combs' reply is due on November 8th, 2024. However, given the imminent harm of certain extrajudicial statements relating to the ongoing grand jury proceedings, we request that the court immediately restrain extrajudicial statements by potential witnesses and their counsel during the pendency of the motion. Now, what they're saying is, yes, we know we have to reply by November 8th, but there's a problem happening right now. Court, you need to silence these people. And of course, in any trial, as I mentioned before, particularly high-profile trials, public comments are very concerning. The defendant has a constitutional right to a fair trial to be heard by a fair and impartial jury. Pre-trial comments could affect a potential jury pool's views on the case. It could bias them. It could prejudice them against Sean Combs. It could also affect witnesses too, and what they say and how they'll testify or if they'll testify. And by the way, even before we get to a trial, the grand jury, if you believe the reporting, the grand jury is hearing evidence right now. You don't need public comments that could affect them. And this is what is really bothering Sean Combs' counsel. Quote, over the past several days, a grand jury witness and his attorney have given multiple interviews, including outside the courthouse immediately following his apparent grand jury testimony, making false and outrageous claims, including that the witness possesses videos of Mr. Combs involved in the sexual assault of celebrities and minors. So, this is in reference to a man named Courtney Burgess, who reportedly testified in front of a New York grand jury last week in the Combs case. And as I said, it is believed that a grand jury may be hearing new evidence right now, new evidence in this case that could possibly result in additional or amended charges for Sean Combs. But Burgess, who along with his attorney Ariel Mitchell-Kidd, went on News Nation's Banfield show last week and said that he was provided multiple flash drives containing sex tapes of Combs' abuse, and it featured at least 8 celebrities. Some of them, he claims, were minors. Now, Burgess seemed to indicate that the flash drives may have come from his friend Kim Porter, Combs' ex-girlfriend, who tragically died from pneumonia a few years back, but Burgess says he doesn't have the tapes anymore. He also says that he has received a manuscript from Porter's alleged memoir titled Kim's Lost Words, A Journal for Justice from the Other Side. I actually interviewed the author of that book, Chris Todd, a little while back. It was interesting because while that book took off on Amazon, the sales skyrocketed, the company took the book down because the accuracy and the claims of that book have come into question, and there's been a lot of blowback by the friends and family of Kim Porter about that book. Anyway, back to this. Combs' lawyers, they have taken issue with what Burgess and Mitchell Kidd have been saying in these interviews and also the press conference that they held on the courthouse steps. Quote, "These stories have spread rapidly through the media and created the impression that such videos exist, which is false, and that the government is actually crediting the sensational claims, which is profoundly prejudicial." While the witness and his attorney eagerly spread false and unchecked claims in the media, they have avoided subjecting their claims to verification through the legal process. For instance, the witness and his lawyer admitted that he resisted complying with the grand jury subpoena and only appeared after the marshals tracked him down. And when directly asked if they had the videos to back up their outlandish claims, the attorney responded, "That's what we're going to head over to do now. So we're having a hearing now to determine what we're going to do in terms of what documents we will have to turn over and what documents we do not." Her references to documents rather than videos is a clear indication that they do not possess the latter. Indeed, this witness, who has never even met Mr. Combs, claims that he received the tapes from an unnamed individual who was subsequently shot and killed, along with a purported memoir of the deceased mother of Mr. Combs' children that has since been denounced as fake. By treating these ridiculous claims as anything but a pathetic extortion scheme, the government is fueling the fire of online conspiracy theories and making it impossible for Mr. Combs to have a fair trial. So Combs' lawyers are arguing the court, they need to step in now, that it has a constitutional responsibility to minimize the detrimental effects of prejudicial pretrial publicity, and that includes restraining, quote, "the speech of potential witnesses and their counsel, including those who may ultimately not be part of the criminal case, especially where the government refuses to identify who it plans to call as a witness." In other words, okay, government, you have an issue with identifying these witnesses. What happens if this guy doesn't even testify in the case? We have a right to stop him from speaking. And just to double down on that, Combs' lawyers say it's not right that those who are suing Sean Combs and are not prosecution witnesses, it's not right that they can take advantage of the criminal case against him. Because after all, they're using the indictment and those allegations and his arrest to strengthen their own claims in their own separate lawsuits against Sean Combs. Combs' lawyers are saying it's not right that they can take advantage of the criminal case and at the same time say, wait, look, we're not part of the criminal case, we shouldn't be gagged in any way. Quote, "Those litigants and their counsel stand to financially benefit from a conviction and therefore are highly motivated to make damaging statements in the press. To say that those cases and those litigants are unrelated is illusory." And from there, Sean Combs' lawyers conclude the letter by accusing the government once again of improperly leaking information about the case. Quote, "The recent press is especially damaging because it has occasioned another wave of leaks by law enforcement in violation of the court's October 25th, 2024 order, the order that I mentioned before." And Combs' lawyers reference a few different media articles here. So first, they reference a CNN piece from a few days ago, and in that piece, CNN cites a source familiar with the Combs investigation who says, quote, "The grand jury is always meeting. This is an ongoing investigation." Then CNN cites a separate source, also familiar with parts of the investigation, who says, "The grand jury has never stopped." Combs' lawyers also reference an NBC piece that cites, quote, "a source familiar with the grand jury proceedings who apparently confirmed that a male is expected to testify Thursday." Combs' lawyers also reference a New York Post article that was published a few days ago. And in that article, the Post attributes, quote, "a federal law enforcement source who is involved in the investigation as saying they're all too happy to talk, and we're asking them about their recollections of the freak-offs, what they were paid to do, and who else was involved. I'm surprised how many of them can recall intricate details about what happened." And this source also apparently told the Post they were all encouraged to take Viagra and Cialis before the parties. They were expected to perform and were told if they didn't perform, they'd be thrown out of the party and not paid. And also, this apparent federal source says we have to identify all the people in the videos, and then we can figure out how old they were at the time and make sure that none of them were trafficked or threatened to participate. It's a long process, but we're making progress. So you can see why Sean Combs and his counsel are upset about these comments. And they have provided the court with a proposed temporary order restraining the speech of potential witnesses and their lawyers. And they provide a copy of this gag order. It reads, During the pendency of defendant's motion for an order pursuant to Local Rule 23.1, all potential witnesses in the above referenced matter and any related grand jury proceedings, including their lawyers, agents, and representatives, shall not directly or indirectly release or authorize the release of any non-public information or opinion which a reasonable person would expect to be disseminated by means of public communication if there is a substantial likelihood that such dissemination will interfere with a fair trial or otherwise prejudice the due administration of justice. Statements that presumptively have a substantial likelihood of interfering with a fair trial or otherwise prejudicing the due administration of justice are defined by Local Rule 23.1. For purposes of this order, potential witnesses include any individual who claims or has claimed to be a victim of Mr. Combs in connection with the allegations described in the indictment or any similar or related conduct. So that is a very, very broad order, and at the time of this recording, Judge Subramanian has not signed off on it. We'll see where it goes, but as Combs' lawyers are asking the judge to get involved and asking him to sign off on this order, the judge did do something. He did do something of his own. He entered the following order, quote, "Given the urgency of the issue, if defendant has additional arguments to make on the motion in reply to the government's opposition, he should provide those to the court by November 5th, 2024 at 12 p.m. In other words, I'm giving you the opportunity to not wait till November 8th, but November 5th to provide your arguments in response to the government's opposition to your gag order on those witnesses." Okay, so this is an important issue, and it's going to be very curious to see how it shakes out, because you have to remember, if Sean Combs is convicted, he can raise pretrial publicity issues in an appeal and maybe get that conviction overturned. So this cannot be ignored. There's a lot of important things happening. So we will see where this shakes out, and we will continue to follow it for you here on Sidebar. That's all we have for you right now, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.